On May 11th, 2023, Nintendo patented a series of designs for what we could only presume would be technology for the Nintendo Switch 2. On September 7th, this patent was approved and published in accordance with copyright and patent law, meaning that anything Nintendo has applied for here now belongs to them solely. The content in this patent was incredible, but hard to decipher for the casual gamer that Nintendo often attracts. In this video, I am joined by a good friend of the channel, Zpaced, and we will break down the patent for all of you. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around because we are about to fully expose Nintendo's big secrets in regards to the Nintendo Switch 2. Let's dive right in, straight into the 34-page legal documents.
Hey, listen!
We've got a lot of big things to dig into here, so let's start off with the thumbsticks. I'm sure you've all heard that Nintendo is switching to a Hall effect sensor thumbstick, right? A few bigwigs have been posting articles about it lately, so if you haven't already, you're going to now. You may be wondering, what even is a Hall effect joystick? Well, a Hall effect joystick is a thumbstick that utilizes magnetic technology in order to relay the position of your character or whatever else you're controlling to the platform you're playing on. You may also be thinking, well, what's the difference between these and the normal joysticks we've been seeing in controllers for years? The difference is relatively simple. The Hall effect sensors use magnets to relay the position, whilst a potentiometer relays the position using contact electricity transmission. Think of it like the Hall effect thumbstick floating past a certain point to send a signal, almost like a ping pong ball rotating in a cup of water. Once the rotation passes a certain point, the signal is sent. The potentiometer thumbstick grinds against the casing, sending a signal. This would be similar to a bearing rolling in a mechanical apparatus. Unfortunately, the potentiometer sticks have been the most common system used in controller manufacturing for many years, even though they produce an inferior product. They can get dust buildup, damage from friction, and a plethora of other things that can cause what's now widely referred to as stick drift. What's really great about Hall effect joysticks is they can't succumb to the dreaded stick drift that has been plaguing Nintendo Switch consoles since the initial release. Come to think of it, I can't recall a single person I know that owns a Switch who hasn't had at least a little bit of issues with the joysticks on the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons.
For sure, stick drift became such a problem that in April 2023, Nintendo actually announced that they would offer repairs for the problem, for free and for life. While this is a really nice gesture, it doesn't stop the fact that if you own the Joy-Con as your only main controller, you would be forced either into not being able to play your console, or alternatively having to fork out to buy a new controller while yours are being repaired. The idea of stick drift being eliminated isn't the only thing that excites me about this patent or design though, as it looks like Nintendo are not just taking criticisms to heart and fixing them for good, but are also going one step beyond. Nintendo are, by the looks of things, looking to add a gimmick to their controllers, or at least add a gimmick to the Joy-Con design, according to these papers. It would appear as though Nintendo are aiming to create a better feeling for the players, and this word is thrown literally all over the place. Feeling. The only question is though, how do they plan on doing that? How do they plan on making games feel more immersive? By asking our viewers to subscribe and go check out Spaced's videos, which they can find in the video description?
Most definitely, but that doesn't really seem like a Nintendo request, does it?
Called out. It was a hey listen request. But in all seriousness, how do they plan on adding that extra layer of immersion? It turns out that it has a lot to do with these little sticks that Nintendo do not want breaking. Currently, we tilt a stick and a character or camera moves. This has been the way since the PlayStation 1 era. Nintendo are making strides to correct this by building tension into the thumbsticks. They intend to do this via both a fluid and an electromagnetic field that react to one another. There would be a way of turning the magnetic field on, which would then cause some fluid to solidify, causing more tension within the thumbstick. This tension or viscosity would be able to be adaptable to some degree, with different settings being available on what would presumably be a trigger or perhaps an application. Or even within the games themselves, as an application is referenced multiple times. This though does not mean that the application needs to be something separate, but it could rather be an application that runs in the background of the games that are already being played. The increase or decrease in the viscosity would allow for different areas or biomes in games to feel different, for aiming controls to feel more immersive. Auto runs would be possible, and we could see push and pull puzzles in games being more of the norm. We've seen some of these within the most recent Legend of Zelda games with Magnesis and Ultra Hand. The push and pull mechanics here are controlled via the D-pad, which feels very clunky to say the least. Imagine now that this changed to being controlled with the analog stick, that you could add tension to really make the placing of the parts for the puzzle ultra precise. Another mechanic that could be really fantastic with this type of mechanism though would be aiming down scope during first person shooter games. FPS games have long been avoided on Nintendo Switch. However, we know for certain that Call of Duty is coming to the Switch following the Microsoft and Activision merger.
Let me tell you, I'm super stoked to see it. The last time we had a Call of Duty game on a Nintendo system was back on the Nintendo Wii U. It was the infamous Call of Duty Ghost, one of, if not the most polarizing games in Call of Duty history, especially amongst fans of the franchise. But all of that is about to change, and in a big way. For those of you that have used an Xbox Elite Series 2 controller, you'll be aware of just how nice and robust the tension adjustment is. Being able to adjust the tension of the sticks allows the player to customize their controller on another level. This is extremely beneficial in first-person shooters such as Call of Duty. There's other methods of doing this as well, such as Control Freak tension rings and the like. But what if I were to tell you that Nintendo plans to take this idea and improve on it drastically? Imagine having the ability to not only adjust the tension of your thumbsticks, but also the ability to map that tension to the press of a button. It is our speculation that this will be possible with this new electromagnetic thumbstick technology Nintendo just patented. As you can see here in the patent, there's multiple references to software toggling, which we believe can be used to manipulate the viscosity of the fluid within the thumbstick control apparatus. What this ultimately could signify, and I'm just spitballing an example here, is when you're running around in a Call of Duty match, when you pull that left trigger to aim down sights, the tension of your right thumbstick could be set to change. Then upon releasing the trigger, the tension would turn itself back down via the software almost instantaneously. Speaking of quick, there's references here in the patent potentially hinting towards anywhere between 200 and 1000 Hz polling rate on the next Nintendo console controller. This opens up Nintendo to actually being in the competitive gaming space once again. With esports still being very popular despite prize pools not being as large as they once were, that doesn't necessarily mean the landscape isn't improving. Nintendo jumping in could even possibly give that extra nudge to bring esports to all new heights. I really would like to see what they could do with this technology in a Pro controller, one with back buttons or paddles, mechanical clicky switches, these new killer sticks, and some super sick software. Hopefully they don't forget about PC users as well. I know lots of PC users love to use Switch controllers for the gyro, so an upgraded gyro would go a long way as well. One thing's for sure, Nintendo is going to be putting a huge amount of pressure on the competitors by making a controller that on paper could end up being virtually flawless.
It's not just competitive games that would really benefit from this technology, as single player games would feel a whole lot different too. And remember, that's Nintendo's MO here, feeling. And what would make games feel better than more degrees of control over running, jumping and shooting? We could apply these analog stick designs to so many games, but I think the key one here has to be the 3D Mario games. Since 1997 we've had the same feeling to Mario's leaping abilities with only slight variations to the formula, and we've only received a handful of new ways to reach different kinds of heights. But with the viscosity we could be absolutely treated to more feats of timing, where for instance we don't just have to swing the analog stick left then right and then press jump to do a side jump. We could potentially need to release a magnetic fluid at the start of our jump to jump higher than before. We could even see the stick's resistance as we go through certain areas of flooring, such as quicksand or water. This would change the way that these areas feel, as we'd need to go full tilt on the controller to push and power through. Mario wouldn't be the only one to benefit though, as if this is all about feeling, then the Legend of Zelda series would benefit significantly. Sword fighting would be a completely changed mechanic, with one of the sticks being used as a sword, with the air resistance, drag and even enemy clashes all factored into how the sticks respond to us, which therefore mean that we need to respond back. Imagine the sort of games that could benefit from this sort of system. Minigame based games such as WarioWare would have an extra dimension to play in, with the analog sticks offering extra resistance. You could also have more spots in games similar to the incredible section on Metal Gear Solid with Psycho Mantis, but this time with bosses literally messing with the joystick software.
You like Castlevania, don't you? You enjoy role-playing games.
We could even see a remake of the original No More Heroes. Surely accurate sword fighting would interest Suda51. In all honesty, this feels like it could be something pretty special. And it's only made that much better by the fact that you will allegedly be able to store several settings for the release of the fluid, meaning that at the touch of a button, preset configurations will be at your fingertips and you'll be able to switch from one playstyle to another in rapid time. This preset system also made us wonder about something else entirely, and that is the ability to customize your controllers by making the controllers fully remappable.
What might even be the biggest takeaway from this whole patent that I think a lot of you are going to love is the potential of actually having remappable buttons and presets. According to these statements in the patent for the controller tech they're speaking in regards to, This controller will have the option for presets and remappable buttons. Now this is huge for gamers that have gotten used to a certain control scheme. Say you regularly play on an Xbox or PlayStation and are accustomed to that controller layout. You'll be able to remap your face buttons and fingers crossed for back buttons or paddles to any button you wish. What's also really cool about this is the electromagnetic fluid viscosity profiles. According to this snippet from the patent, said profiles can be saved in the preset library. This could imply that the controller has the capabilities to save onboard presets and application presets as well. I'm going to take a not so wild guess here and say that the amount of profiles to be saved natively on the controller will be around 4 or 5 based on what the competitors' controllers are currently capable of doing. How things feel is mentioned more times in this patent than I care to count. Needless to say, it's a lot. The reason I mention this is because I'd put my money on this technology being applicable to triggers as well. Depending on how they implement this tech in said triggers could determine a pretty wide range of use cases. Use cases such as something similar to the adaptive triggers than the PS5 DualSense controllers, all the way to being able to set the tension so high at a certain point you could essentially have trigger stops. That's not all though. For those of you that remember the Steam controller, it had dual action triggers which provided you with 2 buttons inside of each. If my speculation is correct, and they do implement this electromagnetic fluid tech in triggers, then you may even be able to have multiple stage triggers. This would provide players with the ultimate customization experience. Now the only question I have is, do you think this will be available on PC?
You know, actually I wouldn't be too surprised to see PC users be able to use this Wonder controller in good time, if this is really what is happening. The thing is though guys, you have to bear in mind that patents are designed to protect an idea before the physical product is made. This means that while Nintendo have lodged the patent, it does not mean that it will actually see physical manifestation. That will come down to how they manage to build and implement it. But for now, this is genuinely our very best information on what we could expect from the Nintendo Switch 2. We're not done with the Switch 2 though, Space, are we?
No, not even a little bit.
Next time, Space will be back and we're going to go through other possible features that the Switch 2 could have, as well as any possible games coming up in the future for the new console. This is probably the most exciting time to be a Nintendo gamer, so make sure that you subscribe to keep up with the latest in-depth news. And then make sure you go visit Spaced's YouTube page in the description for up-to-date gaming news and reviews. We'll see you next time. Bye!